So hopefully that was informative. We've got these organelles. These are sort of being stained or highlighted that are from an electron microscope slide, and just showing these actual depictions. So you've got over here is the nucleus, and again, remember in these cells the nucleolus contains the chromosomes, sort of like your closet, keeping them tucked in safe. And we've got the endoplasmic reticulum here, where you've got all the ribosomes that are going to be transporting proteins and other kinds of substances. You've got, here's one mitochondria that is metabolizing energy. And what you've got here, this is a division between two cells. You see how packed together they are. And this is the plasma membrane. It's always referred to as bilipid because it's just two cells, two lipid. Each of those little yellow bodies is supposed to represent a cell. Those are fat cells. That's what a lipid is. It's fat. And then these green places here are protein channels. This is sort of a cutaway. And that's where different substances can come through if they're allowed. And this is a moving semi-permeable membrane that's very thin, and you'll hear about this coming up, like here. Okay, so again, here you can see it easier. The two layers of lipid or fat cells, each of those here's one layer and here's another layer. So very, very tiny. And this is where the ions cross through. That's the semi-permeable part. Protein molecules. So remember, those are manufactured in the cell. This next animation, I'm not going to show it here, so please stop what you're doing, go to the site and take a look at it. It's a really cool animation. It's not 3 minutes as indicated here, but it's very interesting. And the part where the proteins are being transported on that little tubule, and it's sort of that walking step pulling the protein along, you'll definitely want to see. Now, the neuron, of course, has all these same structures in it, but it's specialized, just like we have blood cells and bone cells and heart cells. And they all have their little specialties. Like a heart cell beats, has a little beat, and when you put them next to each other, they start beating synchronously. It's very cool. So what neurons have are some dendrites. These are branches, and dendrite comes from the Latin meaning branch, so they look kind of like little trees. And they narrow as they get towards the periphery. They receive information and send information to the cell body, so they're taking in information generally external from the neuron itself, sending it into the cell body, and because that information is either excitatory or inhibitory, and information is coming in on all kinds of dendrites, and it can be inhibitory and excitatory. All that, those calculations have to be done at a certain point in the cell to decide whether a signal is going to be sent or not, an action potential. And then there's, on these dendrites are little tiny bumps or spines, they're little outgrowths that increase surface area for information to be passed. So a synapse is where that information can be passed, and that from that gap. Here's a stain of a neuron, or 2 or 3 or 4. So these are all neurons. These are that's the cell body, the soma of the neuron. And here's the dendritic branching. And you can see these, they look a little fuzzy. Those are the dendritic spines. Here's some different types of cells, neurons. This particular one is called a Purkinje cell. And you notice the huge number of dendrites that are coming off of that. And Purkinje cells are often located in the cerebellum, and if you think about that really packed little gray area on that other slide that has 70 billion neurons and how that information has to process very quickly, that's important. These are neurons that conduct information to and from the skin. This is a pyramidal cell, so named because its body looks kind of like a pyramid, and you've got these dendrites coming off in different places. This is it's called a bipolar cell because it looks like it's got two poles, and that's located in the retina of the eye. And this amazing cell here is one that's found in the honeybee nervous system. Kind of complicated. So we've got dendrites, we've got the cell body, the soma, we've got an axon, which looks a little bit like a dendrite. People can get that confused. It's a very thin fiber. It doesn't get narrower as it goes away from the cell body. It stays a consistent diameter. Most of the time it's longer than dendrites. There's usually just one. So it's going to send information from the cell body down the end of it to the what's called presynaptic terminals. Sometimes they're called terminal boutons, French, because they look like little buttons. And at those endings, neurochemicals, neurotransmitters are housed. And when the action potential gets to the very end, neurotransmitter will be released into that little tiny gap that Ramon Cajal discovered, that's going to convey information to the next dendrite or cell body. Some of the axons are covered in what we call myelin sheaths. It is each sheath is composed of a glial cell, and the wrapping of the myelin around the axon allows for faster conduction. And if you think about the axon that's going from the base of your spine down to your big toe, that's a long way for information to go quickly, so that if you stub your toe, you get a reflexive pullback of your toe very, very quickly. It's not slow. And for example, I'm kind of short, and so my axon to the base of my toe isn't super long compared to some of these amazing basketball players, but their reflexes are not slower than mine. So myelin helps keep this transmission very quick. Myelin is also implicated in multiple sclerosis. It's degenerating as a condition that the myelin disappears, but because the substrate of the axon, the cell area, is changed forever with the myelin wrapping, that just because the myelin goes off doesn't mean that the signal can still be conveyed. So I'm going to stop here.